Two revolutions. Well, the first one I think a lot of people will know about, and Melissa mentioned it, the Corpus Revolution, which sort of hit dictionaries first, but of course is now very widespread. I hope this is sort of fairly well known to most people here, that the CoBuild project, which was started by John Sinclair at Birmingham University in the early 1980s, it was the first time a dictionary had been made from using corpus data as opposed to other kinds of data, and it was, it was the beginning of a major trend. And since 1980, there's been, I'm calling it linear development, in the sense that things have just got better and better. The software has got better for analyzing corpora. The size of corpora has increased greatly. I worked on the first CoBuild dictionary for a bit, and we were using a corpus of 7 million words, which at the time seemed absolutely phenomenal and wonderful, and was actually, and was revolutionary. We now routinely use corpora of 2 billion words, and that's not just for English, that's for, certainly all the big languages of the world, and even less big languages too. So that's the first revolution, and the effects of that are very profound, but I'm calling them kind of internal, in the sense that they affected what lexicographers do. They affected our work, profoundly, our working methods. They certainly made dictionaries better, no question about that. And I think anyone looking back on a dictionary from the 70s would be able to see that the description that we are able to give of language is just much richer and deeper and better and more reliable. So it's led to better dictionaries, but nevertheless they are still dictionaries. Say when the CoBuild dictionary came out in 1987, it was all corpus-based, full of new insights that people hadn't had before, but it was still a dictionary. The second revolution is actually much, much more revolutionary, much more fundamental in its effect. We had a slow start with this. I remember I was working at Longman when we produced a CD-ROM dictionary in about 1993, I think. So almost 20 years ago. And for quite a long time, that was the model. You had CD-ROMs, which were really just like the printed dictionaries, except in digital form. And they had a few extra features. You could search them more effectively and so on. But the changes were kind of cosmetic, largely. And then, as I was saying at the beginning, there's a very rapid acceleration since, about 2007, 2008, where things have sort of just gone bonkers, really. The web is the important thing, the rise of mobile devices. I just checked today. I wanted to remind myself when the iPad first came out. And it was in 2010. At the beginning of 2010. They're now onto iPad 6, and apparently 25% of the adult population in the US owns an iPad, right? And in places like Korea, all the sort of school textbooks are, the school children are going to use, obviously not iPads, but presumably some Samsung device or something like that. So mobile computing mobile information is here. And so I describe the effects of this as external, because this affects the users. It affects people who want information about language and so on. So it affects everything, actually, and it's really, really big. It's a new paradigm, but it's still emerging, and we actually don't know quite how things will pan out. So that's sort of, that makes life both exciting and quite challenging at the same time. So what do we lose from this? Well, I'll start with what publishers lose. I've always worked for big dictionary publishers, Collins, Longman, Macmillan. Dictionaries used to have a very reliable business model. It was quite simple, actually. You sold someone a book and they gave you money. And if you sold enough books, that provided money so that you could carry on improving them and changing them and so on. So that was pretty good. And also the dictionaries were very you just produced one, the Oxford Advanced Learners Dictionary, the Longman Dictionary of Contemporary English, and so on. And that was good for all over the world, so it was one size fits all. And we used to know who our competitors were, because, if I'm at Macmillan, my competitors were Oxford and Longman and Collins. But it's not like that now. Your competitors are sort of pretty much everybody, actually. And you don't know who's going to come out of the woodwork and sort of eat your lunch, which is, and this is happening everywhere because, for example, there are car companies now that, from Silicon Valley where we're not talking about Ford or Honda or anything. It's some startup by a dot-com billionaire who decided to invest in electric cars. So it's a very different kind of world. There's also the other thing we lose, although I'm not sure if it's a great loss, is this role of the dictionary as a gatekeeper. And in a way, that's a function of the fact that dictionaries are quite small, so you can't let everything in. And therefore, you have to have criteria for what you don't let in. There's a couple of things on the links on your handout to a flowchart that OUP have about how words get in the dictionary. And there's also a video that Merriam-Webster, the American sort of equivalent for Oxford, have where they're basically answering this question that a lot of people ask, which is how do words get in the dictionary? This is you won't be able to read it, but it's how a new word enters an Oxford dictionary. And it's very elaborate. There's an elaborate process, and this is what I mean by the gatekeeper. We only let things in if they fulfill a whole range of criteria. Don't worry if you can't read it in detail, but that's you get the picture. It's not a small thing to be allowed in. You see, so that role is kind of going, and with it is the sort of time to think because. The publishing cycle of dictionaries is typically about 5 years. So you bring out a new edition, and then you bring out another one in 5 years. Now that gives you time to see which words are sort of settling in, and which are not settling in. And then the last one is, which you might not be able to read. Well, I put here degree of control over users' behaviour. That's putting it rather strongly, actually. But what I mean is that, in a printed book, there's a kind of limited number of ways in which you can find information out. And we could sort of guide, in a way, control that. But now, people can find things out however they want. And we actually have no control at all over what users do. So that's sort of quite a big deal. What do users lose? Well, this idea of the dictionary as an authority, which is quite an interesting concept. It's sort of foisted upon lexicographers, and on the whole, they're not all that comfortable with the idea that they're sort of, they're in charge and they know what's what. I read this terrible there's somebody called Alan Brown who was writing in the Times. Now, this was when Chambers Dictionary, which was a very nice Scottish dictionary publishing company, closed down about 2 years ago. And this bloke, Alan Brown, was saying how awful it was that all these lexicographers were going. And he said, lexicographers are white-haired, cardiganed, index-carded old duffers. You can feel me kind of getting a bit annoyed about this. Boffinish, pedantic and obsessed. For them, the words disinterested and uninterested are as distinct as lions and tigers. Well, I sort of object to this on so many grounds. Sartorial, for one, but also linguistic, and it's just wrong. This is what the public think, but it's not what lexicographers are at all comfortable with. The other thing that is lost, I think, and can be a problem, is this whole thing of too much information. That, well, it's what everyone is suffering from pretty much all the time, and so you do need to manage information very, very carefully. So that's an issue, but I don't think it's a loss.